Guys, good morning to you, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Ask AZ, our weekly sessions that will be available on my podcast platform as well as YouTube. So if you're joining us, we have our live audience, but if you're joining on the recording, just a quick reminder that the purpose of me showing up every single week here is to support you on your self-realization journey, which is designed for you to realize for yourself who you are. And this is the idea here, is to support you as you're going through the content, my coaching program that I've made available for free. If you're not on that, please make sure you are on that, because the questions will then become relevant to where we're at. We'll be on the same page, if you like. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. I would strongly suggest that you watch my Limitless program, again free, online on YouTube. And after that, there is coaching segments that are called truth bumps that are there as well, and just start in order: truth bump 1, truth bump 2, and so on. And currently we're still releasing new truth bumps. I believe there's a new one coming out this week as well, for those who are all up to date. Or you can be like Jonathan, who just joined us only a week or two ago and has already gone through and completed all the truth bumps in like a few days. Animal. What an animal. Well done to you, mate. So, yes, obviously if you're enjoying it and you got the time, you can really sink through. I've got people in here who have re-listened to multiple truth bumps multiple times. I've got people in here who have transcribed, these content. I've been doing this for, 20 years or so. And, back in, 15 years ago, I remember when someone would sit down and transcribe some of the content, I would be like, that's great value for them, but it was also great value for me. But now these days, the transcriptions are all for free. There's AI that does it for you and all that. But it's still wonderful for anyone who's really getting that much out of it, to actually sit down and, take some notes from it. I always suggest that when you're listening to any of my coaching content for the first time, don't take notes. Just sit there and be really present. But then when you watch it again, go for your life. Take as much as notes as you want. Anyway, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone who's live. And that's my little intro, just so we're all on the same page. For those who are not part of the live calls, you can be. Just go to my website and look for the Live It community. On there, you can get access to being on the calls live. Obviously, it's very different when you're live. You can ask questions, and there's a difference when you're spending a moment together in time. We are spending a moment, and it doesn't matter where you guys are all calling from in the world. Some of you are in the evening. I'm at 6 a.m. Some of you are in winter, summer. It's the same moment. It's exactly the same moment. So, it's very special when you are sharing this in the same moment. And we have a WhatsApp group, and I believe there's actually a community getting built in the back end right now. So we can actually have something more than a WhatsApp group to connect and converse and support each other on this journey. It's this very rewarding journey. So at this point, I wanted to open up and see if someone has a question, a comment, or a contribution of something that's come up. Maybe a question about the content, maybe some things that are going on, and I can coach you on. So if you do, please step forward, proceed, speak up, whatever you like.
I've definitely got some topics.
Oh.
If there's anyone else,
go ahead, Jonathan. Hey,
No, I was just saying I've got some topics to talk around, but if there's someone else, because I think we've spoken with the last two, so I don't know if anyone else wants to
Mate, you know what? Sometimes it's just, I'm here for you, you know?
That's what we spoke about last time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cool. So, okay, since last week, so great to see you all. It's really hot. I'm in England. Still like 29 degrees today.
Sorry,
I'm cooking.
Did you say you're hot in England?
I am cooking.
Wow. Does England actually get hot?
It's 29 degrees today.
Oh, yeah. 29. That's not hot. In Australia, we get 40. I'll just
Go
on, Joe.
You've got nice.
Sorry.
So since last week, Amir, thank you for all the info last week. It's been a great week. I've listened to your WTF experience. I'll definitely go through that a few more times. That was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm working through ACE podcast now. So I'm touching on a lot of topics, really interesting. So the question I've got, so I've been on a really interesting, I keep saying this a bit, been on loads of really interesting journeys, but this particular one, and so when we talk about having a feeling and being in flow, I've had one of those with business for about a year. So I've got a business with the project management and manage big projects in rail.
Yeah.
And I nearly started another business, and for a very good reason, it got to a mature place, and I made the decision not to do that. And I got a feeling to digitalize a side of my business, and it was a kind of step in a different direction for me. And I won't go into all the details here, but it's been an amazing journey. Like the last year, we've developed a product, and it's all about creating a better future for project management in rail. And I'm working very closely to nationalize this product. So I'm only me and a very small business, and it's been absolutely. I live in disbelief that I've kind of got this product to where it is, but I've presented nationally on this, and I always get to the sort of presentations, and I'm always like, yeah, what if they don't like it? And so this is touching on some of your topics, and it's amazing how I come alive, and it's like I reflect at the end and go, that wasn't me. Like, you know, it just fielded in such a way, and so where I've gone on this journey is I joke and I say I've got to see the one more regional director, and then I've got to go to Network Rail's IT strategy board, and then I've got to visit God, and then I'm there, and that's how it feels, right? So, but my question is, so sometimes when you're thinking about, because I've consciously not pushed, I've consciously let the pull create and let the product and the attraction happen. Mm-hmm. But it's very hard sometimes to do that, because actually sometimes you want to go, I'm going to go and knock on that door, and I'm going to go and tell them they really need this. And I've managed to kind of pull myself back, but I keep reaching this place where I'm going, should I use my inner intention, or should I allow the outer intention and the feeling? And it's kind of, how do you, how do I balance that is the question I was trying to get to.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I think it's a place that most, if not everyone, gets to when, they've started to do the work on themselves, and they start to realize this new empowerment, let's call it within yourself. And then you go back to your external world, and if we can refer this as internal and external, you get to a point where they're both the same. But and you get to and you go back to the external, and then suddenly it's like, well, what you're used to doing in the external is pushing, manipulating, forcing, as you said, like you're making it happen. Where the internal is it's allowing it to happen. It's letting it to happen. So I remember for myself getting to this place, and it almost felt like I had to, and my background is in business as well. So, when I went back to my business, and we focus on sales, or we focus on, and then it just, the way I approached things didn't feel like I almost felt like I was learning to walk again. I felt like there was a it was like I had become a greater version of myself, a new version, and then that version played the game differently. And it felt, at first it felt like I had to learn to walk again, learn to navigate between, well, do I force this, or do I push it, or do I just, and, it's neither, it's, you're in the place right there where you're in that moment, you're in two, you're going between internal and external. And I said, there's a point where, it becomes the same. You want to do what it is that you're doing, the point though is you want to do what you're doing because you're doing it. Like there's a lot of times I'm doing what I'm doing or saying what I'm saying because I'm saying it. Like it's not like I'm not deciding to say this. I'm not sitting there and going, what should I do? I'm noticing I am doing this. Like that's a really, a great place. And we refer that to being in flow state, when you're kind of noticing, oh, this is what's happening. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm responding. And in that place, you're one, the two have become one. So, I think, but to answer your question and to refer back to what my personal experience from that, there's, like I'll give you an example. This is more of a simple example. When I would go back to my business, I remember getting to a point where I went like, you know what, I don't want to make it about the money anymore. I want to do what I'll do because I feel to, and so I struggled with that for a long time because, it would bother me that there was all these people, all these organizations that were so about the money, not about the people. So I had obviously that was a reflection of my own process. And I really didn't want to make it about the money, but the more I didn't want to make it about the money, I was making it about the money. So I went in this cycle. For me, the cycle went for a number of years, actually. It wasn't something I got really quickly. And, so, every time I would come up with an idea, an idea would land with me. I get an inspiration to do something. I'm on the right track, right? But then I would proceed to move forward with that. And then suddenly I would see, oh, it's going to bring in money. And then I would have a part of me, which is my ego, my identity, would then go, oh, so you're making it about the money. I was like, well, no, it's not, so I had this internal dialogue going for a while. And every time I do something and there was an opportunity for money to come in, or so you're about the money, and, I went through this for a little while, and I got really exhausted, and I was getting nothing done because I didn't know, it would start with inspiration. It would start with hey, I've downloaded something, an idea. And as soon as I went into moving forward, well, money comes into it. You're playing the game, right? I'm not making it about the money, but then my mind goes, oh, so your decision's about the money. So I got so tired of that, Jonathan, that I got to a place one day where I couldn't shut that down or move past that point. And I got to a place where, went, fuck it. I'm done. Like if I do something, because I ended up doing nothing. I ended up just spinning my wheels for a while. If I do something and it was out of ego or it was for the money, great, I will learn from it. I stopped trying to avoid the mistake, avoid making it about the money, avoid making it about the ego, avoid following my ego voice, right? I stopped doing that. I stopped battling with the ego, right? And I stopped making it wrong. Oh, if I make the wrong, because right there in that moment, I was all about following the feeling. No matter what, follow the feeling, follow the feeling. So then the ego will come up and go, well, I'm the feeling, right? Like you got to understand, as you transform, and by transform, you're becoming a greater version of yourself. You keep becoming a greater version of yourself. And ultimately you can become an infinite version of yourself, an infinite being. in the finite world, as I refer to it. But every time you become a greater version, right, the ego's coming with you, right? And as the ego follows you on this journey, it starts to see your view and basically use your language. But and it says, oh, we're just going to follow the feeling, like, you know, so. But then, like, so for example, there is a moment where it's not a feeling, right? It's more, I always say it's an emotional reaction. So you've got a feeling and then you have an emotional reaction. And then the ego will use an emotional reaction and go, well, this is the feeling. And this is what I call a fabricated feeling. And it's like, well, it feels light. And you're telling yourself this, right? It's not like, you're like, yeah, I'm you know, for example, just to keep simple, you have a reaction to something financially, and you go, let's say you're struggling. There's a financial decision you need to make, or there's a financial struggle, and you're like, well, I'm going to follow the feeling, and the ego will come up and go, let's go sell this, or let's go and force and manipulate some sales, right? But it won't use those words. It'll be like, and I would ask clients sometimes, why do you feel to do that? And they're going to me, well, I really feel to. And they're using the same language. How do you know you feel to? Oh, it just feels right. I have no reason, right? Like, they're telling themselves this. So it takes on the same language. Well, tell me about the feeling. It just feels really light, like it. And you can feel when there is an absence of the feeling. Like, as a coach, I can feel it. And sometimes when you're in the moment, and you're in a fabricated feeling and you're trying to survive, you're like, you're closed off to it, and you don't know. You don't know until you know that. But that's the thing. So, so that this ongoing battle with the ego, it continued for me until I was like, so what if I'm an ego? And I remember, a client one day, because of course this was being reflected in my life at that moment, and a client went, aren't you an ego? And I can't remember what the conversation was. You're an ego there, Amir. And I said, I know. Do you like it? Like, I was done with trying to hide it, with trying to fight it, because the more I was trying to fight the ego, the more power I gave to it. In fact, the part of you that's going, hey, we need to overcome the ego and don't follow the ego, and we need to, bring death to the ego. Guess who that is? It's the ego. Do you know? So the more you battle with that, and the more you're giving power to the ego. So we'll come back around to your question, but it relates a lot to the ego, the master of the identity. So for me, my ego didn't disappear when I overcame my ego, but its power over me disappeared. It began to not have a voice. It's like the voice is something in a distance, and if you really wanted to attune to that voice, you could. But at some point, when I was trying to get the right decision, trying to make the right call, trying to not be an ego, all that is driven by ego, right? When I was doing that voice had a dominant. It's like you're a boardroom meeting. It had a voice at that meeting, right? But as you overcome ego, and to me, it's not like your ego dies; its power over you dies. You will always have an ego as you're going on this journey, but its power over you is no longer dominant. So when they say death of the ego in different spiritual teachings, and they say you need to die before you die, which is death of the ego. But the ego doesn't die; its power over you dies, and it just becomes it's no longer got a spot on the boardroom table anymore. It's at the very edge. You know, the people sitting in the corner of the room who don't have a voice, so just sitting there and observing, it becomes that. So, and yeah, so to me, the battle stopped when I stopped trying to get it right, and I stopped trying to make the right decision, and I was okay with just making a decision. And if that decision or that choice I made was one that was egoic, or was one that was, you know, an emotional reaction, well, guess what? You got to learn. You know, they say more is lost in indecision than the wrong decision. You're better off making a decision, a choice, and getting it wrong. And then you learn, okay, great. And I know some decisions are very big and you don't want to get it wrong and you put all this power into it and all that. But the moment you do that, you're what I call, you're in two already. You're in a mindset of duality. And when you're guiding yourself, when it comes to, you know, big matters or things that, you know, the matters of life or love, you really want to be in one, you know, and you really don't want to be thinking about it. So when it comes to, you know, intuitive decisions and, you know, things, you know, people I love, things I love, I don't think about it. I just decide. I decide and I think about it after, if need to be, right? But the decision I make the decision. When I know, you know, when you get attuned to your feeling, your intuition, and you know your intuition well enough, and how do you get to know it well enough? Well, you need to have experience with it. You need to make the wrong decision. You need to make the right decision. You need to learn what the ego is. You need to learn what the ego is not. You know, you can't just sit there and be afraid to move forward. You got to move forward, and it's better to do that with just little things than the big things. But you get to a point where I got to a point, I should talk for myself, where I became very clear about the feeling when it's the feeling. And as soon as I have the feeling, call it your intuitive feeling or things that you love, I decide I'm doing that. And then I think about it later. But the decision diffuses the ego. Like a wholehearted decision, I'm doing it. I don't think about why or how. I think I'm doing it. This is happening, right? Now, the ego wants to entertain the why or how first. And that takes you into two. So now it's got control. It's got a voice. So to overcome that voice, if you can just get to a point where you're really clear about what the feeling feels like, and that's the thing, like if you think about the feeling after you have the feeling, you're now in two. It's the moment you have the feeling, you're deciding or you're choosing, that's what's happening. And so to me, in my life and where I'm at right now, that's how I operate. You know, if I feel to do something, I don't look at how or why or is it a good idea, the pros and cons. Hey, I feel to do it. Like I love it. And when it's the real love, there's no reason. So let's not look for the reason. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be lots of benefits and all that, but that comes after. But if you look at the benefits first, then now you're also open to the drawbacks. You're in duality. If you look at why this is a good idea and why it could work, well, you will also find in that same mind, in that same platform, why it won't work and why it's a bad idea. This is why when people make a decision, often, they'll make a decision and they have a feeling and they think, oh, and when you're in the feeling, because it feels like it feels fresh, like what a good idea, like or you have an inspiration. I feel to do this, and what a great idea! This is great that I feel to do this. It's like you feel inspired, you feel moved. It feels light. It feels fresh, like it's not connected to anything else. It's like, I love, and in that moment, you're thinking, it's the best idea. I can't believe I never came up with this idea before. Why isn't anyone else doing this? Like, kind of, you're along that train, right? Having thoughts like that. What a great idea. But then a moment later or moments later, if you start to think about it, you actually talk yourself out of, it was a moment ago, it was the best idea in the world. But then you're like, what was I thinking? I mean, that's a terrible idea. I mean, there's a financial crisis, and what will people think? And maybe I'll lose what I've got now. But hang on, a moment ago was the best idea, but you lose that. And you've all experiencing that all the time. And you notice yourself swing between the two. The way I don't swing between the two is I decide when that feeling lands, right? And I know some of you are going to go, oh, what if it's the wrong, what if that wasn't go and do that with little things where what's the word I'm looking for? It's not much at stake, if you like, right? But I get it though, because usually the feeling shows up on things that there is something at stake. It's like, so anyway, that's the way I manage it. But to answer your question, Jonathan, I haven't forgotten. So, look, along my journey, I kind of started to follow the feeling. No, I didn't kind of. Well, I guess I kind of started, and then I got to a point where I was following the feeling. And then I got to a place on the journey where I would be only following the feeling, if you like, and when you start to follow the feeling, you start to see things happen. And I would interfere with what would happen. I call it moving the cup. So I got to a place where I could say, oh, this bottle, like you're following a feeling and you're like, and it becomes clear about how the story is going to unfold. Well, this bottle needs to go over here. So then I would just, I need this to happen because I know it's going to happen anyway. So I would encourage it. I would use the word encourage it, but I was pushing it, forcing it, manipulating it. But I'm like, well, it's got to go there. I mean, I just know they're going to, that's what's got to happen, right? Cool. If you know that's what's got to happen, why don't you let it happen? So I got to a point where I would move the cup, and there's a point I get to where I said to myself when I would reflect how I would lose my flow, or how I fell back into an emotional reaction rather than the feeling, and I thought to myself, what came to me was like, in all this, you followed your feeling, you kept to this point, this cup is going to go there. It's clear the cup's going to go there. Not that you're wrong. This is my own download. But did you feel to pick up the cup and put it over there? And I was like, well, no, I didn't feel to do that, but I knew that was going to happen. Cool. But who said it was you that was meant to pick up the cup and take it over there? Yes, you're right. The cup's going to be moved. But if you want to stay with the feeling, did you feel to pick the cup up and put it over there? No, I didn't feel it, but I knew that was going to happen. Don't touch the cup next time. This is my own, and I share that because for me, I coach you guys, I coach myself, and it became really clear that, I wanted to play a game where, if there's something at my feet, it's come to me in this moment. It's come for me to take action on that, move with that, I will. If it hasn't, I'm happy to leave it where it is. And I know this is not really giving you an answer to a question. So you're like, well, because I can see maybe you're like, so do I leave it or do I? So where are we going with this? Ultimately, it just depends where you are on your journey. For me, where I'm at right now, I'm only interested in playing, in moving with what's presented itself to me. I'm not afraid to move forward. I'm not, in denial or lazy or procrastinating. If something comes and it's for me, I will move forward with it. I've got to a place where I don't want to play in what I call cause and effect. Cause and effect is what we were experiencing in duality. So for something to happen, you need to cause it and you need to do something for that result to happen. So, and that's true in duality, but I often refer to, you're either in your feeling, being the greatest version of yourself, choosing, and the story is then bending around you, or you're bending around the story. In cause and effect, you're always, and this is going to manifestation right now, but in cause and effect, you're always bending around the story. Most people are bending around the story. The story shows up and you're like, what do I need to do? Like even a decision you want to make, you look to the story and go, well, how would it impact me in the story? What would people think? What if it doesn't work? You're then bending your decision around the story. All right? Pushing things, forcing things, manipulating things, right? It's all you bending around the story. Allowing it to happen is, what are you allowing to happen? The story is bending around you. Now, the story, and this takes a lot of work to get to this point, but it's real and it works. I live this way. But I'll be honest, I didn't get to that point straight away because the story was more concrete at a point in my life. And what I mean by the story is more concrete, I mean that I had more power in the story. The story, my story, the external world is what was going to determine whether I was happy or if I was free or if I was safe, right? That was concrete. So I would continue to make decisions around what do I need to do to be happy? Who can I get to give me approval or recognition or accept me so I can feel secure and safe or happy? So I was continuing bending around. So the story can't bend around you when it's more concrete than the feeling. So when the feeling becomes more concrete, and it's kind of weird to say that because the feeling is more flowy, it's not concrete, but the knowing is far stronger, far more dominant than the knowing you have from the external. And when that happens, the story begins to bend around the feeling. So you feel something, you stay with that feeling, you choose, you're still taking action, guys. I just want to make this clear because some people are like, I'm just going to stay with the feeling and I'm just going to sit on my hands. No, you take action. If there's no action to be made in that business right there because you don't feel to make any further movement right there, go take action with your family. Go take action with your go and do something. Like you still live your life. You're not sitting there going, there's my hands, I'm going to sit on it and I'm just going to let the universe present itself. There's a book I'm writing called Why Spiritual People Are Lazy. And it's about exactly that. They're waiting for the universe to bring it. But you need to bring it first. By bringing it first, I call that showing up. Like you show up before the universe can bend. You make the decision, a wholehearted decision, which we spoke about that previously on the Ask AZ, right? I don't know. I do calls every morning. It blends all into one. Forget which one's which, but there is a segment where I talk about wholehearted decisions. It's wholehearted. It's not half-hearted. It's not. I'm going to do this because of this reason. That's a half-hearted. It's half-heart, half-head. Wholehearted is like I said before. when I mentioned before, I decide first before I look at why or how. How's it going to happen? Or why do I want to do it? What do you mean why you want to do it? Didn't you just feel it? And by feeling it, doesn't it mean you feel love to do it? And by love, doesn't it feel like you feel safe? Yeah. And by safe, doesn't it feel that you feel inspired? Yes. Like, well, but hang on, let's think about that. Let's think about how I'm going to get safety in this decision and how I'm going to get accepted and approved in it. But hang on, all the things that you're looking for in the story, in trying to make this decision right, you already feel it in your feeling. Oh yeah, I do feel it in the feeling, but I just want to make sure I've got it in the story first. You see? It doesn't work that way. It's deciding, it's choosing based on what you feel in that moment, making that decision, and then come to the story, and then help navigate. You know, you're navigating in the story. You know, it's like you by following the feeling, you activated your GPS. You know, but most people are like, well, let me look at the outside first before I activate the GPS. But now the GPS gets confused because you're like, well, I have this outcome, I have this result, I have this option, I have these pros, I have these cons. The GPS is now going too many outcomes. You know, but when you make a decision on the feeling before you look at the why and how, that's you programming your GPS. Then you come into the story and it's giving you guidance. And the story is bending. And by the story bending, it means people showing up. Circumstances are changing, or they're showing up in a way that is supporting the decision or your view of that decision. You know? So there's a lot there to take in, Jonathan, and feel free to bounce back with me with any questions. But for me, I only use that now, and then I come in the story and I play. I decide I'm going to America in 2 weeks. I'm going to be in the US. Which, by the way, I have to tell you guys, I'll message you in the WhatsApp, but I'll be missing some calls with you guys. So, but anyway, like I decide I'm going to America, right? And the decision's made first, and then there is, well, I'm here. I can also do this retreat, or well, I'm here, there's things that then land afterwards, after the decision is made. So, for me, especially this year, Jonathan, like I got to a point where, I went like, I'm done with cause and effect, because I'm always been following the feeling, but then you come in, you kind of come in and try to fit the feeling in the cause and effect. You know, and I just got to a point this year in particular where I went like, I'm done with cause and effect, which is what inspired me to share all this. What I'm sharing, that decision of I'm done with cause and effect, and I don't even want to play the cause and effect in my business, because that's one area where I would play cause and effect. And I just got to a point when and from that decision, I'm showing up and doing these coaching calls right now, and there's no financial arrangement. And I have no problem with that. You know, I'm releasing all my content, which people before were paying, thousands of dollars a year for. I'm releasing them all for I don't even see it as free. I just don't have a financial arrangement for it. Now I'm not saying that's what you need to do. Please don't. That came from me saying I'm not going to play cause and effect anymore. I'm just being honest. That's how I came to what's the reason we're having a conversation right now is because I got done with cause and effect. So, where does that land with you? I mean, when someone asks me a question, I like to give the answer because it really depends on where you are and how deep you are on the journey. Because some people are very ingrained in their story, so I want to give them an answer that's going to support them. Because you don't know, Jonathan, but you're asking me a question, and maybe you do know. But that question is for hundreds, thousands, of people, and everyone's getting a version of that answer based on where they're at. But ultimately, I use my mind to move forward. But you give that to someone, and they're like, "Yeah, well, it becomes woo-woo." It just depends where you are on your journey. And so, how does it land for you anyway?
Yeah, I think yes. Thank you. So that was a lot of information there. So how it landed, and really what I took was it's really having that belief and trust in your feeling, and as you develop your intuition and your ability to connect with your feeling, you as a whole come together as one in making those decisions, and you need to trust that more. It landed with me really well because this year's been a great year. I knew this year would be an amazing year in terms of personal, I think conscience, awareness, that sort of growth in me, and I can feel that. And your explanation there kind of reinforced actually strengthening my belief in myself and my trust in my feeling. I mean, just for everyone on the course, a really good example for me is this, and it very, very close. So yesterday, I had a 2-hour journey from London to York in the morning. I had a 2-hour journey from York back to London in the afternoon. Now, what I'd like to have done is sat for 2 hours and worked my way through some more of your podcasts, Amir. But what my feeling told me I was going to do is it told me that I was going to spend the time in a load of detail, doing a load of cost analysis on the way to York, and I was going to be summarizing it on the way back from York into a presentation, which is bizarre because I don't like the detailed cost analysis stuff, but it was very strangely satisfying. And I was impressed with how much I got done on the way there. And I got a call in the middle of the day from a guy who told me that he wanted to meet me at 9:00 this morning to go through where we was with the platform. And all of the information that he asked me for this morning was all the output from the summary presentation I did yesterday afternoon. And it was just, wow. It just couldn't have fallen into place better. And I would not have chosen to do that. I just, myself.
Yeah. The amazing thing is you all do trust the feeling. Everybody trusts themselves. We often say you got to trust yourself, trust your intuition, we all do, because the moment you feel your intuition, like within there, right there is, like I was referring to before, is all the ingredients. You have a knowing, like you believe, you think it's a good idea, the ingredients is in there. But what you do is go, but let me leave this here and go and think about it. Right? When you say, let me go think about it, you're saying, let me go and look at it from the view of duality. What are the pros and cons? Should I not? Is it going to benefit me? Is it going to be detrimental to me? In that moment, you've lost the feeling. But the moment you feel the feeling, everything that is required is there.
And Amir, how many times, and I'm guessing you don't get to the other side and go, well, that didn't turn out how I expected to, that feeling didn't work for me. I'm sure you don't do that. But how many times, when you've gone through following a feeling, do you get to that point and go, well, I didn't expect that, or, that's surprising, or because I guess with most people, it's if I follow the feeling, what's the consequence that could be bad? How could this turn out bad for me? But very often, I guess it's not turning out bad for you. That it's just a different part of the journey that you maybe didn't expect to be on.
Yeah, when you're following the feeling, sometimes first of all, let me make this clear. When I first started, I thought to myself, I'm following the feeling because of it's guiding me to get the things I want. It was all about, the outcome or result. So that I interpreted that the feeling, I'm following it keeping me safe, and it's basically driven by an outcome and result. I follow the feeling to get this outcome and result. And as I began to follow the feeling more and more, I started to realize that it wasn't about the outcome and result. It was actually about how I felt when I'm following the feeling. In other words, I'd get up on stage, or even right now on this, online platform, and I'm speaking to you guys, but it's not a result that is amazing here. I mean, the result is you could have had a great experience. People message me and saying thank you for this, and I'm getting so much from it, etc. Right? But it's not about that. It's actually about who I become when I'm doing this. So it's actually about the feeling that you have when you're doing what you feel to do. I had a client of mine once, actually was a friend, and, she had just written her book, and she was a little bit nervous, about the results. How is the book going to be received? Will it sell a lot? And she had plans to sell a lot and become a big selling author and all that kind of stuff. And I said to her that, and why are you nervous about it? Why is your attention on that result? And I went back to her like, tell me why you wrote that book. And then she lit up. Oh, I love this topic, and and she went and talked, and it talks about how she felt when she wrote the book. And I said, you see, right there is why you read the book. You wrote the book, sorry. You wrote it because of who you become when you write that. But you're thinking, there's a part of you that wants to hook that to a result. And it's like, I'm writing this to sell books. Now, I asked her, when you first felt to write this, was there any part of you that was moved by how many books it's going to sell? When you first felt it, not when you started to think about it. When you first felt it, she was like, no, I loved to write it. Like it was about the writing. And I said, yeah. And then there's a part of you called your ego. It comes and hooks that to a result and goes, yeah, but this is only going to be good if we sell it. Okay. It doesn't matter if you sell 0 books. It wasn't about that. It's about the feeling that you have when you wrote it. So what that means is that it's about who you become and are becoming when you're doing that. So I soon, very early on my journey, I began to realize following the feeling is not about a result or outcome, right? Following the feeling is about who I become when I'm following the feeling. And the more I follow the feeling, now don't get me wrong, just in case your ego's screaming, going, but what about the outcome result? Of course, when you become that version of yourself, the story bends. So then there's results and there's outcomes, but it's not because of what you're doing. It's because of who you're becoming or who you're being. Okay. The story bends, if you like, it reflects, just in case your mind's struggling with the bending part. Well, it reflects. But if you're doing what you're doing to make the story bend, I promise you the story will show up in a way where a carrot is being dangled in front of you, and you will never catch that carrot, just like the donkey that keeps chasing that carrot. if you're doing something purely because of the result. Now, don't get me wrong, the result is important. You know, you guys are playing the Euro Cup in Europe right now. You got the soccer. The result is for one person, one team to be a champion. If that result or that, if we just went, oh, well, guys, this is like, in year 2, when you play soccer, when you play football, it doesn't matter who's the winner as long as you tried your best. Well, the platform, the intensity of that platform is, the frequency of it is very low. You need to have this big result. But it's the team that can not go to the result, but stay in the moment. It's what's happening right now. We're training right now. We're playing this game. We don't think about the next game. It's those teams that will excel. Now, where was I going with before? I just went into the Euro Cup, which is a diversion of where I was. So yeah, the feeling. So what I began to realize is that when I follow the feeling, it's not because of an outcome or result. I know there's a part of you that goes, the outcome and result, right? The outcome and result are things that take care of themselves. To me, I refer to it as like the sun coming up every morning. There's nothing I'm doing. I don't even need to participate with the universe to go, hey, let's make sure the sun comes up tomorrow, or running out of breath, oxygen, like when I'm, sleeping. I'm not going to bed and going, please, universe, let's make sure that I don't run out of breath when I'm in the middle of the night, right? These are things that take care of themselves, right? So to me, not only does the sun and the earth and the turn of the earth and the tides and more, I don't think about that. There's this, it takes care of itself. But then when it comes to our own lives, we think that doesn't take care of itself. No, it does. All those outcomes and results take care of themselves unless you go, I need to make this happen. So then you take over. Right? And then you play how you play. Well, you think you need to force it. You think you need to work very, very hard and put your blood, sweat, and tears. You think you need to give up your family time just to work on this. That's the way you decided to play it. So then you play that way. Right? But otherwise, to me, everything happens exactly how it's meant to happen. But when I'm following the feeling, it's not about the outcome or result. It's about who I'm becoming. Every time I follow the feeling, I become. Here's the thing. I started to realize is every time I followed the feeling, I became more familiar with it. It became more concrete. I was more attuned to it. So the more I followed the feeling, the more familiar I became the feeling. The more familiar I became with the feeling, the more I became the feeling. So here's my question to you. Who are you going to follow when you become the feeling? It's a complete different game. So, the writing book, the author, the example I gave, it's not about how many books you sold. You've already achieved what you wanted to achieve. And what you achieved is that you have this feeling inside of you, this idea, and you wanted to bring that idea out into a book. And it's the same with an artist. And they have a vision, an image, an illustration, a dance, a song. It downloads. It's about bringing that out. Now, yes, there's always going to be different results. Someone will be, selling millions of records or what. But if at any stage your attention goes on that result, the problem with that is that you then do the very next thing that you do because of that result. You got to go back to, why did you feel to write this song? Why did you feel to write this? I just love it. It was never about the outcome and result. If you go and look at, you see an athlete, they just wanted to play soccer. They just wanted to run. They just wanted to swim. They just wanted to play tennis, right? If they can, of course, there's going to be this stage called the Australian Tennis Open or the Euro Cup or what. But that's what intensifies it. Like, without that platform, you don't get to experience the depth of your love, your passion. And that's all that gives. It gives it the platform. So yeah, so for me, it's the more you follow the feeling, the more you're becoming that feeling. And what does that mean? What does that mean when becoming that feeling? What's that feeling? Every time you feel that feeling, what is it? If it's possibilities, it's either possibilities, it's a knowing, and sometimes you refer to that as it. I love it. I'm inspired. Okay, that's what the feeling is. So every time you follow the feeling, you're becoming more familiar with it. As you've become more familiar with it, you're becoming it. What does that mean? What does it mean by becoming? You're becoming that infinite possibility. You're becoming an infinite being in a finite world, as I often refer to. So I don't know where that landed, but we are landing at our end of the our session. But to me, and I know this is not what everybody talks about, and it's I don't work hard. You might say, well, you're getting up at 6 a.m. and da-da. Yeah, okay. It's not, to me, getting up at 6 a.m. is not hard. It was making the decision to do that was hard. So am I going to get up at 6 a.m. for all this? Yeah, I'm going to do it. Once I decide, it's not hard. I'm here. I even had a late night last night. We had the State of Origin here in Australia, big football game. The Blues won, so I was up late. Does make a difference. Yeah. I hope that landed where it's meant to land with you all. And any final questions, comments, contributions before we wrap up? Just quick ones. Lots to think about. You're welcome. Yes, Mandy.
I just want to say thanks. I just find it so funny, but not funny as well, because I know how things work. But to come on, this is my first call, and it's so freaking relevant. Like, it's actually insane how relevant it is. So, but following this feeling, I wanted to just ask a quick question about that. Is like,
yeah.
And when you're like in that space and you just feel the urge to just push, but that shit works out when you don't push and you just go and live your life and do things. Like, what's your suggestions for like kind of dropping out of that feeling of having to just push and
Very easy.
Moving? It's about like
bring your attention to now. You're pushing because your attention's on the result. And like I said, I'm not saying the result's not important, but that's when you push and manipulate. But if you bring your attention to the moment, right, it's that. Can I tell you that feeling is infinite, and the moment is also infinite. So the feeling is in the moment, and when your attention is on the result, like this has to happen. Right? You're trying to control something it's not for you to control. We're not sitting here and going, please, sun, come up, please, sun. It's not for us to control. That's on, it's part of the universe. It's the same with things in our lives. You know, it's to me, whether I won't say whether you push or not, the results. When you decide to push or not push, it just changes how your experience of what's happening. All you're doing is changing, you know, you're burning more years, you age quicker, you know. If you want to do the ageless stuff, it's about being in the moment and letting go of that outcome. Like I said, I mean, we can continue this conversation next week, but the outcome is important because it's the platform. It's the stage, right? And that's why it's important. But what's more important is this moment and how you're choosing to play this moment. That's what's most important. And if you can do that, that's a simple task. If you don't have to be, you know, totally wise or conscious, but if you have an ability to bring your attention back, you're stressed because you're in the future. You have anxiety because you're in the future, right? If you have an ability to bring your attention here in this moment and show up in this moment to do, like, if you can just do that, you start to pick up the feeling because the feeling's in the moment. And the feeling is always present. That's why sometimes it's often said, or often referred to, this moment is infinite. In this moment is infinite possibilities. The future's not. The future's finite. The past is finite. They're also an illusion because it's not something that you ever get to experience. The funny thing is the only thing that you're actually experiencing is this moment. Yeah. We never experience the future. We only experience it in our thoughts, in our head. We experience the future in our head. We experience the past in our head. But what's actually happening, life, is in this moment. And anytime you've had an amazing experience, a rewarding experience, a transformative experience, a loving experience, it's always been because you've been in the moment.
Not worried about the how, I guess. The how comes to pan out.
Well, it comes to you, you know, and you doing what you feel to do, before you know it, you look back and go, oh, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
That's when I know the how. Oh, I look back and go, oh, look, that's how it happened.
And
we have more to talk about, Mandy. Make sure you're on the call next week.
I'll be there.
Guys, bring your questions. Don't be shy. You know, we have Jonathan's been bringing it. And thank you, Jonathan. From everyone. I'm sure everyone here appreciates your questions and discussions. And it looks like we have a new player, Mandy. She's ready to. You always know when you have a player. It's their first call and they want to speak.
I wasn't sure how the call was going to go, so I was like sitting back, and then I was listening. I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I got you now."
It goes however you want it to go. You decide how you want to play this game. So I just show up. There's no plan in this. There's no, there's not much of a plan for anything I do. Whether it's my business, it's a lot of it's it's in the moment. It's what's unfolding, and it works. I have multiple businesses. Two that I mainly am fixated on at the moment. One is this, if you want to call this a business, as a coach, and the other one is I have an aviation company. None of them have plans. But when I say none of them have plans, there is still a plan that unfolds. I'm just participating in the plan that unfolds.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing what I feel to do. I'm not sitting on my hands. I just want to make that clear. Don't interpret my message as a woo-woo thing. It's not woo-woo. Woo-woo is when you can't actually live what you know. You know it, and you can't apply that then becomes woo-woo. But if you can, like all this stuff that I talk about, if I couldn't live it, it's totally woo-woo. But I'm talking to you guys from personal experience. I'm talking to you guys with, you know, how I live my life. And it, you know, it goes deeper than that. But anyway, fantastic. Thank you all for being on the call. We've gone over time now. Let's wrap it up. I'll see you guys next week. I'll post in our WhatsApp group when there's a couple of sessions I won't be available because I'll be on travels to the US. Okay. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks very much. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.